Every paycheck, every fortune, every billionaire, every worker exhausted at the end of the day, they all answer the same invisible question. Not how hard did you work, not how many hours did you sacrifice, but one simple question: what exactly are you selling to the market? Because the uncomfortable truth is this: most people spend their entire lives trying to earn more without ever realizing they've been selling the wrong thing all along. At first glance, the answer seems obvious. A teacher sells education. A programmer sells code. A doctor sells medical expertise. A business owner sells products. That's how most of us describe our work. We define ourselves by our job titles, our industries, or the products we create. And because of that, we naturally assume income is determined by how difficult our work is, how many hours we put in, or how much we sacrifice to get there. But reality keeps breaking that belief. Some people spend decades mastering a profession and still struggle financially. Others build something once and it continues generating income long after the work is done. Some work 12 hours a day just to keep their income alive. Others seem to stop working, yet their income barely changes. The difference isn't luck, and it isn't simply intelligence. It's that the market is answering a completely different question than the one most people spend their lives trying to answer. Most people ask, "How can I work harder?" The market asks, "What exactly are you offering? And why should I keep paying for it?" Here's the shift that changes everything. The market doesn't reward people based on how much they give. It rewards them based on what they make possible. That is why the real question isn't, how hard do you work? It's actually two much simpler questions. How rare is what you're selling? And how many times can you sell it without starting over? Those two questions quietly determine almost every paycheck, every promotion, every business, and every fortune. If what you sell is common, someone else can replace you tomorrow. If what you sell disappears the moment you stop working, your income disappears with it. But when what you offer becomes increasingly difficult to replace and can continue creating value long after you've finished creating it, the rules begin to change. This isn't a lesson about business. It's the invisible system the market uses to value every human exchange. At Mind Over System, we often explore the invisible forces shaping human behavior. The first question the market quietly asks is this: how rare is what you're selling? Not who you are. Not how hard you worked to become that person. Only one thing matters. How difficult is it to replace the value you create? Think about oxygen. You never notice it because it's everywhere. Now imagine being trapped underwater for just 1 minute. Suddenly, a single breath becomes more valuable than a suitcase full of cash. Nothing about oxygen has changed. Only its scarcity has. The market works the same way. Value doesn't come from effort. Value comes from scarcity. That's why two people can work equally hard and receive completely different rewards. One is selling something millions of people can already provide. The other is selling something only a handful of people can. The market isn't judging their character. It isn't rewarding sacrifice. It's simply responding to supply. This explains why replacing 10 factory workers is often easier than replacing one exceptional engineer. Why thousands of people can drive a taxi, but only a few can design the software that coordinates millions of rides. Why one musician earns a few dollars playing in a restaurant while another fills stadiums around the world. The difference isn't measured in hours. It's measured in rarity. But here's the mistake many people make. They hear the word scarcity and immediately think it means talent. It doesn't. Talent can create scarcity. Experience can create scarcity. Trust can create scarcity. A unique perspective can create scarcity. Even responsibility can create scarcity. A CEO isn't valuable because they physically work harder than everyone else. They're valuable because very few people can consistently make decisions that affect thousands of employees, billions of dollars, and years of a company's future. The market isn't paying for their time. It's paying for the rarity of their judgment. But scarcity alone is never enough. Imagine you become one of the best surgeons in the world. Your expertise is incredibly rare. Your decisions save lives. The market rewards you accordingly. Yet every operation still demands one thing. You, one patient, one surgery, one moment. Your value may be extraordinary, but your time remains finite. This reveals the market's second question. Can the value you create continue moving even when you stop? This is where wealth begins to separate from income. Some people create value only when they are present. Others create value once, then allow it to travel without them. A teacher explains the same lesson to 30 students. Someone else records that lesson once, and millions watch it over the next 10 years. A programmer writes a piece of software one time. Millions of people use it every day. An author spends years writing a single book. That book continues reaching new readers decades later. The effort happened once. The exchange happens again and again. This is the hidden power of repeatability. The market doesn't just reward what is valuable. It rewards what can keep creating value without asking you to begin from zero every single time. That's why some people become trapped in an endless cycle. Every dollar requires another hour. Every client requires another meeting. Every sale requires another performance. The moment they stop moving, everything stops with them. Others build assets, systems, products, platforms, audiences, things that continue creating value while they move on to create something new. They haven't escaped work. They've escaped starting over. Now put those two questions together. How rare is what you're selling? And how many times can you sell it without starting over? This is where the market begins to separate income from wealth. Imagine 4 different people. The first sells something that isn't rare and can only be sold once at a time. They exchange hours for money. When the hours end, the income ends. The second sells something extremely rare. Years of knowledge, exceptional expertise, critical decisions. They earn far more for each hour they work. But every new payment still demands another hour of their life. The third creates something that can be repeated almost infinitely. But because almost anyone can create the same thing, competition drives the value toward zero. Scale alone doesn't create wealth. Finally, there is the fourth person. They create something that is difficult to replace. Then, they build a way for that value to reach thousands, millions, or even billions of people without beginning from zero every single time. That's where fortunes are built. Not because they discovered a secret, but because they aligned themselves with the 2 questions the market has been asking all along. The wealthiest companies in the world don't simply employ talented people. They transform rare ideas into repeatable systems. The wealthiest creators don't sell their time. They package knowledge into books, videos, software, or communities that continue creating value long after the original work is finished. The wealthiest investors don't physically build every business they own. They allocate capital into systems that continue producing value without requiring their daily presence. Different industries, different products, different lives. Yet, underneath all of them, the same invisible equation quietly remains. The rarer the value, the more repeatable the exchange, the further the market is willing to reward you. Money is rarely chasing people. It's chasing value that can scale. Once you begin looking through these two questions, the modern economy starts making much more sense. The highest valued companies in the world rarely sell the most physical products. Many of them sell software, networks, payment systems, search engines, operating systems, or digital platforms. What they have in common isn't the industry. It's the structure of the value they create. A single improvement can reach millions of people almost instantly. A single decision can influence billions of transactions. A single piece of software can solve the same problem every second of every day. The same pattern appears everywhere. A song can be streamed millions of times after it has been recorded. A book can keep teaching new readers decades after it was written. A successful video can continue reaching people long after the camera stops recording. None of these examples eliminate work. In fact, creating them often requires years of effort. But the effort and the exchange are no longer locked together. That is why the market often rewards the creator of a scalable system more than the person performing the same task repeatedly. The market isn't saying one person worked harder than the other. It's simply responding to where value can continue multiplying. Imagine two software engineers graduating from the same university. They join similar companies, earn similar salaries, work similar hours. For the first few years, their lives look almost identical. The first engineer continues doing excellent work. Every promotion increases the value of his time. He becomes more experienced, more reliable, more respected. But every raise still depends on one thing: his continued presence. If he stops working, the value he creates stops with him. The second engineer also becomes better at his job. But somewhere along the way, he begins asking different questions. What problems do developers solve over and over again? Could one tool solve that problem for thousands of people instead of just one company? Could one explanation become a course instead of another meeting? Could one solution become software instead of another task? Years later, both engineers are still working hard. One has become increasingly valuable. The other has become increasingly scalable. Neither path is wrong, but they are no longer playing the same game. One is maximizing the price of each hour. The other is reducing the number of hours required for each future exchange. That difference is almost invisible at first. Then one day, it becomes impossible to ignore. This is why these two questions are becoming more important with every passing year. Technology doesn't simply replace jobs. It changes what the market considers valuable. Every time a task becomes easier to copy, automate, or outsource, its scarcity begins to disappear. And when scarcity disappears, value almost always follows. History has repeated this pattern again and again. Machines replaced physical labor. Computers automated calculations. The internet removed the cost of distributing information. Now, artificial intelligence is beginning to reproduce forms of knowledge that once belonged only to highly trained professionals. Each wave follows the same invisible rule. The easier something becomes to replicate, the less the market is willing to reward the act of producing it. That doesn't mean humans become less valuable. It means the definition of value keeps moving. The people who continue creating wealth are rarely the ones competing with technology. They are the ones building what technology cannot easily replace: better judgment, stronger trust, original ideas, unique relationships, systems that organize millions of small actions into something greater than any individual could create alone. This is why the gap between people may continue to widen, not because some people work harder, but because they spend their lives moving toward forms of value that become rarer as the world becomes more abundant. The future won't simply reward productivity. It will reward irreplaceability. Perhaps this is the biggest misunderstanding about money. We often think income is a reward for work, but work, by itself, has never guaranteed value. The market doesn't remember how tired you were yesterday. It doesn't know how many years you struggled. It doesn't measure sacrifice. It measures one thing: its confidence that you can continue solving a problem people care about. That's why income is never really about the past. It's about the future. Every payment is the market making a prediction. I believe this person, this business, or this system will continue creating value. The stronger that belief becomes, the more willingly money continues to flow. Seen this way, wealth is no longer a mystery. It's not a prize given to the hardest worker, nor is it something reserved for the luckiest. It's simply what happens when rare value earns repeated trust. And perhaps that is the real purpose of money. Not to measure how hard you worked, but to measure how confidently the world believes your value can continue tomorrow. Perhaps the goal was never to stop working. Work gives life meaning. It builds mastery. It shapes character. The real question is whether the value you create ends with today's effort, or whether it continues existing after today's work is done. From this moment on, try replacing one question with another. Instead of asking, "How can I earn more?" ask, "What am I really exchanging with the market? Is it becoming rarer? Can it continue creating value beyond my time?" You don't need to reinvent your career overnight. But the moment you begin asking better questions, you begin noticing opportunities that were always there. And sometimes, changing the question is the first step toward a change in the future. The market will keep asking the same two questions tomorrow, the same questions it asked yesterday, and the same questions it has quietly asked for generations. How rare is the value you create? And how many lives can that value reach before you have to begin again? Perhaps your future won't be determined by how many hours you work next week, but by whether your answer to those two questions becomes stronger with each passing year. Because in the end, wealth isn't built in a single transaction. It's built by changing what you choose to exchange with the world.